If you are currently single right now and you do not have kids, I want to explain right now why I believe you are actually winning at life. So this is coming from a 28-year-old guy right now. I'm currently single. I do not have any kids, and I want to talk about the serious benefits of being in this position right now. Now, I want to first preface this by saying that I am not black pill by any means. I'm not like, MGTOW or whatever. I don't hate women. I do not think that people should be single, all together for the rest of their life. However, I will say that there are serious benefits, at least as far as with everything that's going on right now. So before I dive into this topic, if this is the first video that you're seeing of me, this YouTube channel that I'm building right now is brand new, and the purpose of this channel, the reason why I've started this, is because I want to share my personal, I guess you could say, perspectives on how I'm navigating the modern world as far as corporate America, as far as the social aspect of life and all that right there. So if you enjoy topics like this, then feel free to subscribe, check out some of the other videos, and if you want to learn about what I do to make money online, then you could check out the school community that I have down below. So let's talk about why I believe you are actually winning at life. Now, yes, being in a relationship or being married has its benefits, and I believe that starting a family is something that, generally you should want. I would say most people ideally would want to have a family, and I definitely do at some point in my life. However, I believe that jumping into a relationship or marriage too early can be more detrimental than you might imagine, right? So the number one thing that I've noticed, when looking at, and this is at least in America, right? Like I'm in the US right now, but I believe this is also happening in other countries as well. But the number one thing that I've noticed with pretty much everyone that I know that's in relationships right now or they're dating, most of the time there is some sort of tension going on between them, right? And that's whether it's a man that I'm talking to or a woman, there's always some sort of issue going on, right? And so for one, I believe one of the biggest issues right now that's holding a lot of people back from dating as much is going to be the economy, right? So cost of living is more expensive than it's ever been. And so I believe that, especially if you are a guy, like for example, I believe, I aim more traditional, I guess you could say, where I think that, the man should of course be the breadwinner and, pay for most things. However, when you take that into account, it is going to be more expensive then, right? And so especially when you take into consideration that most people are working, 40 hours a week at a job, and most people that are in their 20s right now, that I know of, they are working 40 hours a week at a job, but they barely have enough to support themselves and live currently on their own. So when you then add on top of that, living on your own, you add in a car, and then of course you decide to date, you get like a girlfriend or wife, then that's a whole other expense that you got to worry about as well. Suddenly you're spending a lot more money's coming out of your bank account. And so if you are making really good money and you feel comfortable spending the extra money, or you have come to an agreement with the person you're with to go 50-50 on everything, if that's the way that you decide to go, then that can get very costly. So because of that, more people that I know of are just working endlessly, 40 hours a week at a job, and on top of that, they work an extra, 10, 20 hours extra doing Uber or DoorDash or one of these other side hustles. And so that is also why I believe that a lot more people have kind of become more socially awkward. They're not interacting as much. And that's primarily because we don't really have third spaces anymore, right? So most people, when the little free time that they do have, if they try to date, the default option that most people go to is like dating apps, right? And so the number one thing that I've learned with dating apps is they are a complete waste of time altogether. Unless if you are like a total stud, you're like super jacked, you got this, and you are making good money, then I believe that dating apps are completely rigged against men. So that isn't to say that I'm not saying that women don't have their issues as well. I'm sure that, women struggle as well. But again, with the way everything's structured, it is very hard for people to actually go out and meet others, right? So the next thing that I want to get into is, of course, going to be the divorce laws. So dating in itself is already very difficult, right? Women are programmed to always look for the next and best option, which, okay, they're wired that way, I guess, so I'm not going to fully blame women for that. But with the way everything's structured right now with the economy and with social media, then that's exposed the behavior even more, right? So there are a lot of influencers that I've seen for women specifically saying that, you should have multiple options, you should have a starter husband, you should, cheat on your partner. I've seen videos of that on TikTok and Instagram, and these are not videos that get a couple hundred views. These are videos that are getting millions of views. So this information, this amount of propaganda that is, encouraging women to be hypergamous and cheat and date around and, engage in hookup culture is way higher than it's ever been. So yes, there is propaganda for men too, I guess you could say. But it's nowhere near to the point where, on the women's side, right? So most podcasts, if you look at the top type of podcasts that most men listen to versus what most women listen to, for men it's all self-improvement podcasts, and you could easily look this up as well. But for women, it's all about relationship dynamics and what to expect from your man, but not how to actually treat your man. And so that is one reason why a lot of men that I see are walking away from the dating scene altogether, right? So as far as getting married goes, the divorce laws in place encourage women to actually cheat on their partners and leave them. And so you could do everything right as a man, right? You decide to get married, you have kids. First of all, the cost of getting married is way higher than it's ever been. Why are people going in debt for a wedding when that money should be going towards, raising a kid? I don't get that at all. And then once you get married and you have kids, oftentimes that is where a lot of men regret getting married. And so the amount of times that I've encountered older men that have told me oh, don't ever get married. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I would be a millionaire probably. So I hear that all the time. And the thing that I keep seeing is more men feel trapped because you have to almost be okay with your woman going out and going to clubs and going to, girls' night out, which we all know what happens on that. And you could even listen to bouncers and Uber drivers. I've heard many different perspectives from them, and they often expose what really happens during girls' night out. So yeah, it's a 9 out of 10 chance that, your woman's going to end up cheating on you, basically, if you allow her to go to that. And so if you don't allow that, then you're going to be labeled as insecure. And that's why a lot of young men that I see are walking away from the dating scene altogether, right? So that being said, one thing that I will say in defense of women is this whole boss babe career mentality. I don't necessarily blame women for going that route, and that's primarily just because of, with the way the economy is, you kind of have to be obsessed with making money. Unless if you happen to get with a really rich guy that, just making 7 figures and can take care of the entire family. So as far as the whole traditional family structure of where the man goes to work and provides for the whole family, the wife and the kids, that dynamic is a lot harder to achieve nowadays because of how high everything is in price, right? And so even if you do happen to become that super wealthy guy, then that even increases your risk of going through the divorce court. And so you could even look at guys like Jeff Bezos, was another one, Tom Brady, one of the biggest quarterbacks in the NFL. His wife cheated on him with a jiu-jitsu instructor. And Jeffrey Bezos, I know, had to pay out half, I don't even know the exact amount, but crazy amount of money to his wife, who ended up divorcing him. So you could be the most successful guy on the planet, but that doesn't change the fact that marriage is extremely risky for guys, and so it even becomes more risky once you decide to have kids. And so almost every relationship that I see nowadays, or every marriage, there is some sort of issue that is going on. And so there is a huge risk when it comes to getting in marriages nowadays, and you could also fall into the trap of being accused of something that you didn't do. So that's a whole other trap that you can fall into. So there's a lot of reasons that I keep seeing for why most men keep walking away from the scene. And I want to hear your perspective on this. So what has been your experience with dating, and have you been married before? Share your perspective down below, and what would you advise more young men to do? So if you're an older guy watching this, and if you have some experience that you want to share, then feel free to share that as well. But the number one thing that I have pretty much come to conclusion to is you just have to focus on improving yourself, not to impress women, but you have to do it so that you are living a good quality life. So the reason to get into better shape is not to impress women, it's to feel better about yourself. The reason to make more money is, of course, to have more freedom and flexibility in your own life. And then maybe you could support your current family. And if you do happen to find someone that you feel is really worth while, and as she's really proven herself, then that's of course going to be another benefit of that, right? But I would also say that having location freedom is really good too, just because of the fact that maybe you might consider going the route of dating overseas. I've heard some guys, Western guys, having success going that route. Of course, that has its risk as well, but I did want to present that option as well. So, yeah, my personal perspective on this is, the approach that I've taken is stay single right now as I'm living in the U.S. I believe the U.S. is mainly for making money, and for everything else, it just seems like there's, tons of roadblocks you got to navigate through. So I've taken the approach of just making as much money as I can during my free time, and then of course creating location freedom for myself, and maybe I might try dating in Europe or Asia or something like that. So yeah, that's the perspective I want to share. Drop your comment below, give us a thumbs up, and take care. All the best.